currently interning at Amazon, and I think Satvik's not the only one who's in office, so am I. Yeah, and yeah, that's it. I think we can go ahead with questions and can answer whatever you have.
Well, thank you for your introductions. Now, the software profile is most sought after among all industries. In today's discussion, our panelists will give us their insights that they've gained through their experiences.
With a lot of good opportunities out there, there is also uncertainty among the aspirants in choosing companies. This being one of the most important and difficult decisions to be made at the time of internship, I'd like to ask the panelists to give their ideas on how to sort companies. Satvik, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. So about sorting the companies, the person first need to identify what his or her interest is. Basically, we are talking for the software forum. So as per the software companies, you need to look up two things: that what's the work culture there and what's the PPO percentage that people are going to get. So there are many companies that may be providing a large number of internships, but the amount of PPOs that you are getting is pretty low, like maybe 10% or 15%. So if a student who isn't prioritizing of getting a PPO, PPO is pre-placement offer, just to mention. And if they aren't interested in a PPO, they just want to do an internship, they can look up at the company maybe based on their stipend or the work they like.
Okay, thank you, Satvik. Gunjan, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would suggest that prioritizing companies is based on your interest. Also, you should be aware of what the company is doing, and you should also attend all the company presentations which they have. Like some companies have company presentations and some don't, but you should know very well that what the company is doing. Also, you should look about the work culture they have, and also the previous stats from your department, that what is the selection rate in the company, so that on the interview day, if you have many companies, so that so in that case you can prioritize it, the companies which you want to go for first. So that's there.
That was insightful. Now, Nandini, would you like to add something further?
I think that was exhaustive, but I just say that just be sure of your interest and don't just go ahead with a firm because everyone else is. Put your mind into it, look into the presentation, or just read about the firm, see if you align with it. Mostly people do their pre-final year internships like um, in order to get a PPO because they don't want to fight again during placements. But if that's not the case for you and this is your first internship ever, then you can just go ahead and explore. Then I don't think you should be under the pressure of getting a PPO. Just go ahead and enjoy the 2 month, 2.5 months internship that you get.
That's a great explanation.
Well, now we come to the selection process, which is the most tedious and mind-wrenching aspect. I kindly request the panelists to enlighten all participants over this so that they can let go of certain preconceived notions that don't influence them positively. Gunjan, can you please share your opinion about this?
So the general selection procedure differs from company to company. So usually for software roles, it is like you have some tests, and then on the basis of the test and CGPA, obviously, you get shortlisted for the interviews. So there in the interviews, there are usually 2 to 3 rounds of interviews. Then you get the final offer. So so for Google, it was 2 rounds of interviews, and um, the third round was optional. So that also, like for most companies, this is what is followed.
Okay, and that was informative. Nandini, anything to add on?
No, I think it's different for different companies. As Gunjan mentioned, like for Amazon, it was like one test with I think 5 subsections, which had debugging and coding, some of aptitude, some of verbal ability, and a section on leadership principles of Amazon, which they, I don't know, value like, I don't know how much. Literally everything here is evaluated based on those 11 leadership principles of theirs. Yeah, so even during like the test, they actually give weightage to the answers you give verb in the leadership principle section. Apart from that, the interview is just a fun round. It can last anywhere from 15 minutes to 1.5 hours, I think. Mine went on for 1.5 hours. I'm putting it as the upper limit because I haven't heard a longer interview. um, yeah. So, yeah, it's just that. It's mostly basic. They just ask you to code one or two questions, depending on what the interviewer interviewer is looking for. Yeah, that's it.
That was insightful. Satvik, anything you'd like to add?
I guess almost every point is covered. Just a thing I would like to mention ki, like as mentioned that every company has a different test pattern, but the common thing in almost every of them is that they have a part of CPA in it and aptitude. So you need to take care of that and need to like seriously take that part of the portion. And also, like if any company has a test that might contain questions related to the company policy or the company work, not the company work but the company theories, like for example GS has a question that what you'll do in certain situation, like situational questions. So those questions do hold weightage in your selection for the interview process. Like maybe some people might think that they will skip the question, not important, and will do the CP questions and will grab an interview. That is not the case. You'll need to do those questions as well. And for the interview part, there is a general conceived notion that if you ever reach an HR round, you surely will get an offer. That's not the case. Like even some of my friends who got to HR round in rubric got rejected after that. So you'll need to take care, and you'll heard this thing from like many of your people, many of your peers that HR round. If you have reached the HR round, uh, your internship offer is sorted. That's not the case. Let me just clear it at the first level.
Well, I hope that cleared all the preconceived notions everybody had.
Okay, now moving on. Among lakhs of applicants who seek internships at a software company, a good CV makes a stark difference and one stands out. I'd like to hear from our panelists what makes a quintessential resume to ace the interview. Nandini, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. I think, to be honest, for internships on campus, you don't really need a fantastic CV. Um, the interviewers focus more on how you perform in the interview and the tests and what your CGPA is and which department you come from, sadly. Um, they focus on that a lot. Um, However, a good profile or say a good work experience or leadership qualities or whatever there is that helps you drive your interview. I don't think it's a massive criteria in a software profile when you are being shortlisted. So they don't really go through the entire CV to shortlist you for the test. They rather go through your test and your test score, CGPA, and department to shortlist you for the interview. Uh, but it's always good to have a bunch of internships or a bunch of projects that you've done or any extracurricular activities to boost your CV and to make you more confident as an individual. I think that's what like a that's what they say when they look for work. They want to see if you have the confidence to drive your internship, to get stuff done in a short span of 2 months, and if you can prove a place for yourself when they have like lakhs of applicants. Um, so yeah, as for a good software profile, just build enough confidence and get talking points. That's all.
That was quite informative. Gunjan, would you like to go next?
Yes, so like CGPA is a very important factor. But apart from that, you can also include some of your, like in your CV, you can include the ratings of Code Forces, Code Chef, and also like the course projects which you do. So your resume should tell the recruiter that you know how to code, and you just are not doing just CP, and you know how to apply things. So like projects can be there. Okay, so projects like you can have other projects also which are not very software related, and some machine learning if you are not very sure about the what projects to write. So that's a good CV as like what I can say.
That was insightful. Now, Satvik, would you like to add something?
Um, yes, the points that Nandini and Gunjan mentioned are almost wholesome. But uh, on the same lines, like when a HR sees your CV, they try to see 3 points: that are you smart enough, are you relentless enough, and are you agile enough. So smartness is shown by your CP ratings or the activities that you have done. Uh, like as Gunjan mentioned, that you have to mention your coding platforms ratings. So that shows uh, that you're smart enough. As for your agility, you need to show that you have some extracurricular skills. You are not just a studious bookworm that has been studying for the past 2 years just to grab an internship at a company. They need to see that you are a team player and you can work in an harsh environment in which maybe your peers aren't supportive, or maybe you're not getting enough emotional support from the people around you. And as for my third point, the uh, as Nandini mentioned, that we need to have some projects. Those projects actually should show them that you are a coder. You can use the skills that you have learned in your courses, or maybe through extra reading you might have done, and you are able to implement things. A theoretical knowledge and a practical knowledge are totally different in these cases. Companies do require practical knowledges, and just another point to mention, that they also know that you have been in the college for 2 or 3 years, so they do know your situation. So it's not like you have to create a very extravagant CV filled with 2 pages and have fifties of projects. These must like They don't require that. They just need a powerful enough to show all your skills, and that uh, you can cover all the bases.
Now, that was pretty helpful.
Now we come to the next part regarding projects. What kind of projects are suitable for mentioning in your resume for your software profile? Um, Gunjan, can you please share your views about this?
Okay, so like any competitions that you have participated in, you can include that as your that in your project. Also, some people do projects under a professor during summer vacations or something, so you can include that as well. Also, there should be object-oriented projects in your resume, because it shows that you know the coding style somewhat, and it also shows that you can code. So like these kinds of projects can also be like on based on computer vision or any other thing that you do. Also, projects can be related to machine learning also in the software profile, but like the software part should be more reflected while writing. So that I wanted to mention.
That was food for thought. Satvik, would you mind sharing your views?
I totally agree with Gunjan what said, that it should, as I mentioned in my previous line also, like it should show that you have your application skills with you. And if you are targeting a specific company, like I want to get into that company, maybe you can get to know what they do, or maybe what they're aiming for, and do a project related to that. Then companies do get interested that yes, this person has done something in this field and can continue to work. So that can be helpful. As for our process, like in KGP, CDC allows us to create 3 CVs. So maybe based on those 3 CVs, you can shuffle your projects if you have any, and create CVs for the companies that you're targeting. As per for those students who do not have a project, I would like to recommend them to do some self projects. You can find those self projects easily on internet. Maybe search a few things, and then that would work. But having projects is really necessary.
That was an eye opener. Nandini, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that was very sufficient.
Well, that concludes this question. Going further.
Yeah. Going further, how do the self projects one had undertaken affect his or her selection into a company? Gunjan, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Okay, so self projects have the importance. So they can ask you in an interview about your self project, and at that time, the self project should not be some copy paste. It you should know what the project does, and you should be able to explain what you have done. So like you should work on it. You should not just copy it from somewhere. So that I wanted to mention.
That was pretty informative. Nandini, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think self projects do carry some importance because a lot of people don't end up doing internships in that one summer break you get before your pre-final year internship. So that's when you can maybe outweigh others by having self projects and showing that you put in the effort alongside your academics when you didn't have the time to do a full-fledged internship. Yeah, so make sure you try and do something creative and something you somewhat feel for that you think is a little impactful or you find interesting or has immense learning. Yeah, and you'll easily find it on, I think Kaggle is one of the best platforms to find a lot of self projects and get a lot of reference. So, in case you're just starting off and you don't want to spend a lot of time in learning first and then doing the project, you can just pick a project right away on Kaggle and learn alongside building.
That was quite insightful. Satvik, what would you want to say about this? Satvik, you're not audible.
No.
No, you're still not audible.
Yeah, what about now?
Yes, you are.
Cool. So, like continuing on what Nandini said, that Kaggle is a good uh, platform to get projects, but one of the easiest to get a project, to create a self project, in my opinion, is to talk to some of your CS friends in KGP. Like we have a course in fourth semester, if I remember correctly, software engineering, in which is a list of like around 21 projects, and those projects are actually related to the real life problems, and coding them, like they have a description, their proper description, what all features they need to implement, and you can get guidance from your fellow friends or some of your seniors regarding those projects. So maybe targeting those projects and creating one of a working one, it will be really helpful. And also, like Gunjan mentioned, that you should know each and every part of your project. While writing in your CV, you'll mention 3 to 4 lines about those projects, right? And on each and every line, you'll mention some kind of technology that you have used. Though the interviewers generally look at those technologies and try to see what kind of knowledge do you have. Do you have a knowledge that you get from a upper reading, like maybe while copying the code, you read above 2 lines and the bottom 2 lines and got to know what the code was doing, or maybe you have read the docs of that particular technology and you have used it based on that. So maybe taking a look on that will be helpful.
Okay, now
Okay, now.
that is pretty helpful.
Now, um, now we proceed to a very important topic, which is regarding the coding tests. How to tackle the coding tests efficiently, and what is the best platform to practice in these last moments? So, Nandini, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So regarding tackling the coding test efficiently, I think the efficient. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
Nandini.
you're audible.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
audible.
Cool. I think the efficiently is very tricky in itself. It just solely depends on how much you've practiced, and because at the end of the day, every coding question that you will get in any of the tests will boil down to something you've seen before if you've practiced enough. They have a basic set of templates, and you can always like break down one question into a set of three other questions that you've done previously. Um, and this I think is a pattern very similar to something we saw in JE as well. So I, I'm sure we are capable enough to find that it's something that we've seen before. The only trick is to do it quickly um, in the time you have, because time is a massive crunch here. And given the pressure that we are in during these tests and the exertion that you've already had throughout the day, that just brings the efficiency down. So practice so much that you just have everything in your muscle memory. You don't have to think during the test. Just get the code, just get the question and start typing.
That was very informative. Satvik, do you have anything to add?
Yes, sure. I don't know if we were allowed to mention the J scenario, but as Nandini mentioned, I'll like totally agree with that. That preparing for CDC internships or placements also, like, it is similar to the J process. Either you're too smart that if you see a question, you can gather the concepts instantaneously and then apply those concepts, or either you have practiced so much that you see a question and you know that how to solve it, you know the formulas and you just apply those. So that these are the two things that will ensure that you have a solved coding problem. Now coding does not have that many concepts that we face in JE. So maybe creating a mixture of these two will help you a lot. As per the coding questions goes, I'll agree with Nandini that you have to practice, and they do boil down to some of the basic problems. I don't know if all of the people present here are familiar with code forces, but in my opinion, a question with a rating of 1200 to 1500 is daily breakfast for a coding question. And if you're aiming for a software company from day one or day two, you might face some problems of 1600 to 1700 ratings. So maybe practicing in that range will help you to tackle those questions. As you all are in the last moment, like only about a month is left for the coding test, maybe less than that. So at this point of time, I would all recommend you all to just complete your interview bit ladder. There's a ladder that consists of all the topics. I don't remember exactly what the tag it is under right now, but it has topics like lists, binary trees, DP, greedy, etc. All of these. So maybe try to complete that ladder and then practice on lead code. These two platforms are very near to what you'll face in your coding test. If you have enough time, maybe you can explore code forces, but these two platforms should be your go through. And like like to mention it to everyone, try to work on your typing. Like, people generally lose out because they weren't able to type the whole code. Maybe you know what to code. Like, maybe if you're typing a Dijkstra or something, you'll need to type approximately around 30 to 40 lines of code. So people generally miss out. Like, they are not able to type it in the time of, if they are able to type it, they're not able to debug it. So that's the thing you'll need to take care of as well.
Great. Now, Gunjan, do you have anything further to add?
Like as Nandini mentioned, the practice is the most important thing. Also, like in the test, read the question very particularly and like read it thoroughly so that you don't end up coding something else. So read it very properly and also like think about it once you start to code, and you should have a proper picture. Also, at in this last moments, interview bit is indeed a very good platform for preparation, because I have seen some questions as it is from interview bit in the coding test that was there. So yes, that's it.
Even some of the interview questions directly come from interview bit. Like they'll
Hmm.
show you a question, same that. And also, like Gunjan mentioned, that you should read the question properly. Even I have faced that problem in one of my in the test for sprinkler. I typed a whole solution, and later got to know that the question was asking for something much simpler than what I have coded. So I removed all the code and coded again for that question.
Well,
Okay,
now
and also you can practice some ad hoc questions in parallel to the DSA questions which you'll find on interview bit. So that's also sometimes asked in first round or something.
Yeah, I think even like company based questions from Geeks for Geeks turned out to be very helpful. Like I think in interviews, you either get questions from interview bit or you get previously asked questions from Geeks for Geeks. It's very well documented, and they also have multiple approaches to the same question, so it turns out to be very helpful. So like for the last moment, you all can actually look into it. When you're done with the entire preparation, like you think you've covered all the possible topics, then go to every company that you're aiming at and do their questions when you want to actually revise. So instead of doing all of interview bit again, you can do company specific revision.
Yeah, and I would like to mention some of the topics that people generally do miss out that because they do not occur in CP. Binary trees are one of the topics that may be asked in your one of the coding interview tests, coding tests, and topics like lists and topics related to pointers and something they are generally asked during your interviews. So maybe not important for the test, but for the interviews they are important. So you need to do those kind of questions as well.
well, now I believe everyone is shared. So now you have your structure, strategy, precautions to take, and method to follow. Now we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah. Proceeding with our discussion, with a multitude of profiles available in the industry today, do you think one should aim for multiple profiles? And on what basis should a person decide the right profile or profiles for themselves? Satvik, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. Actually, the number of profiles, as I guess everyone here has heard in their first year also, that you can go for as much societies as you can, but you need to take care of that number if you will be able to handle that properly. Mostly in CDC, generally 3 to 4 profiles come for the internships, and one can target all of them, but you need to be sure that you are prepared enough for those profiles. You can target maybe one of them, two of them, or three of them, but you need to be prepared enough. If you are targeting maybe for all of them, but you aren't prepared for any of them, then you won't get an internship, and then that is just lowering your chances if you are trying to put your legs in different boats. So maybe decide 1 or 2 profiles based on your interest. Generally, what people do is they keep the soft if they do not have interest in the software side, so keep software development as one of their backups and may proceed with their interest, maybe product development or consultancy or like that. So in my opinion, you should aim at a maximum of 2 profiles and prepare thoroughly for those two. But if you're interested, maybe you can proceed with 3 or 4 as per your wish.
That was a great explanation. Now, Gunjan, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, as you mentioned that, okay, at max 2 profiles, I also agree to that somewhat, because like if you are preparing for a software profile, and then you can choose a profile something in parallel, like you can go for quant. Quant just requires you some knowledge of probability and all those things more, like in much depth, so that you can also something parallel to the coding which you are doing, so you can target that profiles. Also, like software profile uh, means you can do it like two profiles max. I won't suggest more profiles, but it's upon your wish at the end of the day.
Okay, that was enlightening. Nandini, would you like to share your views on this?
No, I think I agree to it. It's like if you look at profiles under software, then there aren't a lot. You can either have you can either do like a full stack development, or you can maybe incline it a little bit into analyst, like not too much, but like say companies like GS who offer an analyst role, but their rounds are very coding specific. um, then what else do you have? You have say companies around data science which are very few in number. I think Vadvani was the one, and they didn't come last year. um, yeah, so I don't think it's very different. The preparation is very different. You'll The major chunk of it will be the same. It's just that towards the end you'll have to focus on one part more than the other. If you're aiming for say Fang, then you look at tougher questions, or like more conceptual questions in terms of coding. If you're looking at a more if you're looking at a firm which is more like GS or something, then you can focus more on the the aptitude part of things, because the coding side can be handled, but the aptitude is where people miss out on a lot of times. um, yeah, so I think you can choose to um, prepare for more than one profile for sure. It can be two or three, whatever you want. You just have to have it in your head which is your P0, um, and then it's going to be fine. Like you won't be too messed up because the basis is the same.
Well, that was pretty informative.
Now, um, to be able to do their best is what everyone strives for. Acing the interviews is everyone's goal. So I request the panelists to enlighten us about this. Gunjan, can you please share your views regarding this?
Okay, so for the interviews, you can try practicing it with your friends. Like in the last moments, you can have a one-on-one with your friends and you can ask questions. Also, there is a feature on interview bit or something like where you can get mock interviews. So you can also avail that facility. Also like just try to talk to people, and also in these moments where there is so much CDC pressure on you, so it will also help you relax a bit, at the same time help you prepare for the interviews.
Great. Nandini, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think do definitely consider mock interviews and prepare your introduction well. I think that's a key point. Something I was told by my seniors and peers who had appeared for say Amazon's interview was that they don't care about anything but the interview question that they ask. But I spent 20 minutes with my interviewer around my introduction itself. So, because I made sure I incorporated my interests and how I prove that I'm interested in that particular field, say via projects or via certain other things. You can actually just go ahead and mention something you maybe heard about that company in the news, and that'll give you a talking point as well. Um, all I'm trying to say is um, try to find that one point in your interview which can make you stand out from other candidates. Everyone here has prepared very hard to get an interview and is good at coding, more or less. Um, so one thing that can like bring you up, like that can help you outdo others, is that you maybe code quick and you think through every edge case and you solve it end to end right at once. Or um, that's the tougher part to crack, because it's highly competitive. but the other part can be you work on your introduction. Make sure you involve your interviewer in the conversation, like in your introduction and in yourself. Make the interviewer interested in you. However, this technique does not work always, because a lot of interviewers are very headstrong that no, I do not want to indulge in anything. I will only stick to the interview question. I will only stick to 2 or 3 coding questions and I don't care about anything else. So in that case, your only go-to is your coding skill. So yeah, just keep a balance of that. So practice both kinds.
That gives us an understanding of the interviewing process. Satvik, do you have anything to include?
Uh, Not much. Like Nandini's answer was almost holistic. Like I just want to create a parallel experience. Like in one of my rounds of rubric, they didn't even ask for my introduction. They just started with the question. So like that really happens. Now coming to the answer, I truly believe that a student need to be relaxed and confident enough while being in an interview. If you panic, the person in front of you will know that you are panicking and may take benefit of it and create more panic in the room. So that isn't beneficial during an interview. Or maybe if he or she is helpful enough, they might help you during your panic phase. And one of the important skills that you need to have during an interview is how to turn around. Turn around in the sense that if a discussion is going on, you should know what to speak at what point of time. Maybe you might use some of the terms that you do not understand completely, and interviewer might get into depth on those terms itself. And also, like you should know what coding interview round you're going to face. Maybe talk to a senior or someone from that company who knows what the interviews rounds are for. For example, a company has 3 rounds. So generally what they do is they ask a DP or a greedy question in one of their rounds, in the first round. In the second round, it could be a question of graph or maybe a difficult DP. And the third round is an HR round. So you should know what you're going for. And if you're confident in that topic, maybe do not roam around things like beating around the bush during the interview start. If you know you are confident, you should go through the question. Like interviewers do really appreciate if you're able to solve the question properly and maybe provide an insight in that question or maybe some other solution that they might haven't thought about. Also, think out loud during the interviews. If you're thinking something maybe of a case or how to code, anything related to the problem, or maybe not related to the problem, but something around, you should convey that to the interviewer. You should not be silent during the interviews for a lot of time. Like maybe you take a minute or two to think, but during that also maybe mention a point or two, maybe write something on the code pad and make the interviewer understand what you're writing there. So that's one of the thing. And for all those who are appearing for the interviews, maybe like if I remember correctly, Google had a session before the interview date in which they told some of the interview tips, like what to follow. Maybe Gunjan can confirm that. That those tips were actually helpful, and I used them in other interviews as well. So maybe talk to your friend. Like Google should have a session similar to that this time as well. So talk to your batchmates, those who are shortlisted for Google interviews, and maybe tell them to note those tips down or something like that, and get to know those. Like they are really very helpful.
Yes, indeed. There was there was a session in which they told like what kind of questions would be asked, and they also told not to like there were some questions, so they told that these topics are very important for your and for the coding rounds which are held at Google. So it can be company specific as well, so you should make a note of it, like how what level of questions the companies ask.
Well, now I think we have a clear understanding of the interviewing process and how to approach it as well.
Now, we have some frequently asked questions that we have received from our registration forms. So I'd like to request the panelists to address those questions and clarify the doubts of many aspirants.
Now, what are the other required skills apart from competitive programming for a software profile? Does aptitude or probability or statistics play an important role? Nandini, can you please start by sharing your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think besides CP, there are a lot of other skills that play an important role. Aptitude, probability, aptitude or probability is definitely one of them. Um, Again, but it depends on the firm. If you are looking at Amazon, they don't ask anything around stats in the interview. However, yeah, I think, yeah, they don't ask anything in the interview. They don't even ask anything in the test. So you're free to skip aptitude in case you're looking at Amazon. But I think for a more mixed role like GS, like a more analyst and software mixed kind of role, aptitude or probability and stats definitely play a major role. So you should not skip it at all. Yeah.
So that covers a vital point that organization to organization, the emphasis on certain topics varies. Satvik, anything you'd like to add?
Yes. If you're practicing for like if you're doing some problems in competitive programming, you generally tend to develop your aptitude as well. Doing ad hoc problems make you see different scenarios for a problem. So that does that, and like you should do some of the puzzles that like puzzles, the term that is used for the interviews. Like you might be shortlisted for some of the HFTs or some hedge funds, and they do ask questions around those puzzles, the probability. I haven't heard that much that a statistics question is being asked. Maybe if you have something in your CV related to that statistics, like maybe you have done some research, some project related to that, maybe then they might ask you questions, but not exactly like they'll go into a formula and ask you. The and as per the probability and aptitude, I recommend those who are uh, targeting for the HFTs, they should do those. Even if you have a normal competitive programming skill, having a good puzzle solving skill and reasoning skill will help you get an offer from them. Like as for the quad interview that I had, they started with a probability question and were really focused on that, asking what how you are approaching the problem, what's the final answer. Like from the final answer, I remember that if you are in an interview, you should be able to reach to the final answer. Like final answer is important as much as the process. If you have reached the final answer, like 50% of the points you have in your bucket, and the other 50 is from the process that you are explaining to the interviewer. If you aren't able to get to the final answer, maybe you get 25 to 30 points for the explanation. How good the explanation it is, it doesn't matter unless it matters, but that really turns down the confidence of the interviewer that you are a eligible candidate or not. So maybe take a note of that. And yeah, like maybe doing CP and some of the puzzles will serve you the purpose.
Now we have certain points to keep in mind. Gunjan, anything you'd like to include?
Yes, so like it is company specific, whether you should do it or not. So, like as of Google, they don't ask probability and statistic questions in their interviews, not even in their test. But some companies do ask, so it's better to be prepared for it. You can there are some books like Heard on the Street, and so you can refer that for doing the questions. That's it.
As Gunjan mentioned, heard on the street, I would like to tell the people that in their preface also they have some interview tips. So maybe not skipping the preface this time might be helpful.
Well, the question has been addressed and a lot of points to keep in mind. Now we'll proceed to the next question.
Yeah. Talking about the next question, the crucial segment of bagging an internship. What kind of questions should be one prepared to face in an interview? Do the interviewers look for coding skills in the candidate, or is it mostly CV based? Sathik, would you like to share your views first?
Uh, yeah, sure. Uh, like generally, if you are aiming for a software company itself, that is basically focused on software, not something like GS or something that do have other businesses as well. So they start with the coding round itself, and they generally do not look around your CV. Maybe the interviewer might be interested in themselves that they might want to ask, but what the company really wants is to solve that CP question. If you are going for a maybe like a consultancy or something like that, like related to that, that might have a coding part, they do look at your CV. Second rounds generally have a CV part in which the interviewer takes a look at your CV and asks you questions on that CV, that what all things you have mentioned in that piece of paper. As per the third round goes, HR generally does not have any context of what the competitive programming questions they can ask. So they beat around the bush from your CV that you have made and ask questions on that. They generally do try to look at your personality from that. Maybe you're exploring personality or you're a team person or not like that. Like I mentioned earlier. So like that around. So I guess I covered most of the points.
Yeah, that's a lot of information. Now, Gunjan, would you like to go next and add something to that?
Yes, so mostly companies ask coding questions in their interviews. So, as of Google, they ask you to code it on a document, and so in both the rounds, they ask you to type the code on the Google Doc. As of Microsoft, they have an interface where they ask you to code, and they also ask you sometimes to run the code. So that is there for different companies. Also, like there were some companies who were also asking things from CV, like Sprinkler did. So that's there.
And like also, as Gunjan mentioned, that Google was writing in the docs. So that is also one of the problems that you'll face that isn't known to the students before the interview comes. Like there are different platforms in which the companies will ask you to code. Google asked me to code on a Google Doc, and I believe that almost 90% of the people present in this meet might have used a Google Doc. So you know that there are no indentations or autocomplete in that doc. So you need to take care of what you are coding and if you're coding it correctly or not. Some of them do use CoderPad or some other platform. I don't remember, like Geeks or Geeks ID maybe. Though those platforms do provide VS Code type of interface, which is helpful, but you do need to practice the complete code writing. People in me also like use some of the hashtag hash defines in my CP template that help me to code faster. But as you reach your interviews, you should stop doing that and write the full-fledged codes. Like instead of using all array, you should write array dot begin and array dot end. Maybe some of my you get that.
Now, that's some tips to keep in mind. So, Nandini, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think this is a very important point that came up, that you should know how to write your codes end to end, and not use templates. A lot of times, I think even the IDs that provided for coding during the test may not have all the segments written. So you should know everything from the package declaration to your print statements to every kind of syntax there is. Also, for most of y'all, I think it's going to be in campus. If that's true, you need to have your syntax thorough. You can't even get reference for your syntax there. So yeah, so be very careful with that, and make sure you have a habit of writing compilable code all the time, because you never know that your interviewer ask um, might have the code that you've written compiled. So if that happens, then if you've missed out on any of the edge cases, then it's a drawback. And if the code does not compile, that's definitely a negative. So make sure you know your syntax and everything runs. They don't really mind a lot if you like forget the syntax. They understand all of this, but it's not the best kind of impression you would like to portray. Yeah.
Nandini just mentioned a point that you might have an offline interview. I just got this into my mind. And with this, you should know what whiteboarding is. Like you should be really insightful of that whiteboarding point. Maybe you should all Google what whiteboarding is. Like, it is a general interview strategy in which your interviewer tries to belittle you. Like, they'll tell you to write maybe
It's
oh
on paper, if I'm not wrong.
yeah,
Like they
on paper.
literally ask you to write on paper.
Exactly. They'll tell you to invert a binary tree on a board, and you'll have to write the code by hand. So you try, like, you will have lot of mistakes doing that, and you'll be pretty slow in that. So you need to take care of that. And as per the code goes, if you have a coding pad, like if you're doing it on a laptop, try to complete the code as fast as possible. Like, interviewers do appreciate if you have written a full code. Maybe you have explained them your whole solution, but weren't able to code it. That's not also, like, that's not recommended.
Yeah, I think maybe just a suggestion to you folks from Communiqué. Maybe try and keep a session for these people by seniors who've had these offline sessions, because we don't have experience in this, and it might be really important for them because they don't have any fun day on it at all. So, yeah.
That's great. I believe you've all noted down the tips and got introduced to some new things as well.
Nandini, we've noted the point you've told us. Next, what do the software companies expect from the candidates? After shortlisting, does the coding test have any influence on the interview? Now, this is a doubt that plagues many people. So, Gunjan, can you start by sharing your views?
So this differs from company to company. Like internally, they can have this the shortlisting based on the like what okay, but you can't just tell by yourself that whether it have a great influence or a lesser influence. So it might happen that if they are confused between some of the candidates, this can be the tiebreaker. That's for sure. So like this is the coding test helps in those situations.
That is an eye opener. Nandini, anything to add on?
Yeah, I think it's just a tiebreaker. Otherwise, they don't really care. I remember hearing things like they keep the answers that you've coded with them, and they check uh, during your interview whether things like that match, or you really have that concept with you or not. But I've never really experienced it, and I haven't heard it from my batchmates. So if that is a doubt you guys had, I don't think that's true. You can code in one way in the test, and you can code in a completely different way in the interview, and they will not be like, no, there was plagiarism there and now you don't know how to do it. Yeah, so that should not be an issue. But apart from that, they won't really ask you how you did what. They won't ask you to explain your coding test solutions in the interview for sure.
That was very helpful. Satvik, anything you'd like to include?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to mention that I totally disagree with Gunjan and Nandini on the point that they mentioned that it is a tiebreaker. Like, I don't know if it is totally true, but I have a I got to know that in Kanpur, like I'm talking about rubric itself. Like in Kanpur, though, in rubrics, let me just give you a little context. In rubrics coding test, we received 4 questions to code in an hour, and like in I coded all the 4, and all of the shortlisted that we have in KGP solved all the 4. In Kanpur, what happened was that the person who coded all the 4 questions got a USA offer. Only one person was there, and all the other who did 3 was shortlisted for the interview. So, like, that's a correct direct example that companies do look at your coding tests and what skill do you have. So coding tests basically are the first point of your skills that company get to know. So it is really important that you perform well in that. Companies do check how, maybe they have, maybe they do not have, but I believe they should, and some of the companies do really have a check on what your code is. like they do have code checkers, how much words you have written, or like what was the format of your code, was the formatting good or not. And sometimes interviewers do ask, like, this was a question you haven't done in your test, do you have any doubts, or like how did you solve that, something related to the test they might ask. And the questionnaire that you might get during your interviews can be based on the test that you had. Like maybe you missed a question and you were still shortlisted, so maybe you can get a question related to that missed question, checking that either you pursue on the mistakes that you have done in your past. Maybe like if you missed a concept, have you read about it at a later point of time? As per the what software companies expect from a candidate, they do know that you are a fresher. They do not expect much, but they do expect that you are smart enough to grasp the technology that they are using in their company. The tech stack that the company uses is different for every company, so they do not expect you to know that tech stack, but they do expect that if they give you a week or two, you'll get to know the top and the bottom of that tech stack.
Well, so can it be concluded that in case of an exemplary performance, your coding round will certainly be noted? Otherwise, it's there is emphasis on the coding, but it doesn't impact your interview that much.
I
Can
think
that be said?
it's a selection criteria for your interview, but once you make it to the interview, you're all at the same platform, is what I understand.
True. Like I'll agree with you, Heyman, that it is a step that you need to take, that you need to cross, but after that, you might be treated equally.
Yeah, however, I think we've all had different experiences regarding relations with the test and interview. Um, Maybe, Satvik, if you can give names of the companies that, if you faced any of this,
Uh,
which actually connect to the, like, connect the test and the interview, it'll be nice for these folks.
so I mentioned rubric had one. So maybe like in KGB, folks solved all the four, so they removed that barrier. Kanpur, they weren't. I've heard about DE Shaw asking about these questions. And if I remember correctly, GS also. Like I haven't faced those questions. I did only three
Mm-hmm.
my day one. So these three companies I know for sure they do look at your test. And I do not remember the name of the companies, but there are some who check your code for their.
Yeah, this some of them do, and I think some of them also write it when you start the test that your code will be checked thoroughly, and it's not only the test cases.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So maybe I think a pointer for all the attendees: check with seniors who have been who've given these tests and who sat for these interviews and who cleared these interviews. Like, do a very company specific survey of these things before you jump to conclusions. We also have limited data points, so you can check company specific things.
Yes, so and note that it's very company specific, and you should not be confused about it, whether it's important or not. So I think that's clear to everyone.
And like I would also like to point out that it is not every time necessary that you need to solve all the questions, that you have to hit 100% mark. Like if you are absolute in any test, you have almost 99% of the chance that you are getting selected. But if there are cases that you weren't able to solve all the questions, but were able to solve most of them, then also you can get a shortlist. Like in my case, in D Shaw, there were three questions for coding, and I was able to solve two of them pretty quickly, and the third one I got stuck and wasn't able to solve it. But still, I got a shortlist in the extended one. So that might be the case with you. So don't get disheartened if you aren't able to solve it, but try to be an absolute, and then you'll have 100% shot. You'll get a shortlist for the interview.
Well, I believe that this finally clarifies this certain doubt that everyone has. Now we'll move on to the next part, Bhavya.
Yeah. So audience, the chat box is now open. If you have any queries or questions you want to ask the panelists, please feel free to post them. We'll take up your questions from there.
Is the chat box enabled for us as well? Like I'm not able to see it. Bhavya, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. We're looking into that.
Our seniors are looking into it. Please give them a minute.
And also, like, if possible, maybe give the attendants a speaking chance. Maybe they want to ask you the question and might have a follow up as well, if possible.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
We're looking into it.
By the way, Nandini or Gunjan, maybe you want to share some of your internship experiences with our folks.
I think if you're looking for a 6 or 7 hours a day kind of internship, don't look for Amazon. Uh, I genuinely end up working for over 13 hours a day. Um, and it's insane. But like the work is nice, the office is beautiful, the people are good and helpful. So it doesn't seem like a pain. But if you want to like enjoy 2 months away from home, then this is not the place to be.
Like,
Yeah,
even
if you
it's for 13 hours, so maybe, but like I'm playing for most of the time. I'm working for 5 to 6 hours only. And
yeah, so now I am talking about 13 hours of work.
yeah, that's
Okay.
that's too much. Like I have an experience to share. I messaged one of my mentors on a Saturday that I have this doubt, maybe clarify it on Monday. Not even asking them to clarify it on the same day. And on Monday they told me that you do not have to work at all on the weekends, and this might be considered as a negative point at the end.
Wow.
Yes, they do restrict here as well. Like if I message my host on a weekend, then they say that don't message on weekends. Weekends you should relax because you should be very enthusiastic the next week. So
Yeah, I think it's completely opposite for me. I've been, uh, since my deadlines moved up due to some company requirements, I was told that Nandini, you might have to work on the weekends. And I'm like, dude, I'm already working on weekends.
Yeah,
Where,
they straight up do
where
not.
do I, where do I get more hours and more days from? And yeah, and I've literally like got on call with some senior SDs from my team to get some doubts clarified on Sunday night. So if like they're also working on Sunday night, so I don't have anything to say, but it's okay. I mean,
Yeah, like in
um,
our case
I'm
as well.
really very sorry to interrupt, but we have a time constraint. And attendees who have doubts, please raise your hand so that we can give you an opportunity to ask. And I'm really very sorry for interrupting you because there's a time constraint.
no, that's okay. We were just
uh,
literally passing time and entertaining the folks by the time you all set things up.
So anybody who has doubts, please raise your hands. I mean, on the reactions part so that we can.
मेरे इतने भी फंडे नहीं दिए भाई.
audience is smart.
या तो कुछ समझ ही नहीं आया.
अरे रिएक्शन देने में भी दिक्कत हो गई भाई.
I can see one question in the chat box, which is which language should I start with? What was yours? Just the one question. So like it was CPP.
Yeah, I think if you haven't started, please start quickly.
Yeah, even I was about
Yeah.
to mention that if you haven't started, you need to take a look at your activities, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, you can always go for other roles. Software is not the only one. But if you're aiming for software, maybe tighten your seatbelts a little.
So
No, that's where the
I
smartness plays the role. If you're smart enough, you can get it in 1 month.
I don't
Yeah,
think
Hemant.
anyone has any doubts apparently because you guys have clarified almost everything with whatever was already there. So overall, I'd like to say the session was very enlightening and an eye opener. Although it is not important to me as I'm still in my first year, moving on to my second year. Uh, so, any
Out
fun
from
day for the
uh,
CDC Junta? Any
Sorry,
fun day you want to
I
give?
guess there is a hand raise.
Yeah, there is
Uh,
one.
Yeah.
Meghna Lakshmi, you can ask it out.
Point it out if we shortlist for, I mean, if our CV gets shortlisted for no, more than two companies like that, do the test or interviews happen at the same slot or they happen at different slots?
like I would like to take up that question. Look, Meghna, the tests are actually like scheduled by the CDC itself. They aren't hard timed by the company. The company generally gives CDC that you need to have that test in a particular slot, maybe 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., something like that. So you can either create a schedule on that, or if CDC is creating some hard timings, they'll ensure that there are no two tests at the same time. If the placement committee members do a mistake and schedule two tests at the same time, you are free to mention to them and tell them that you need to reschedule one of the tests because they are clashing.
Yeah, I think the key is to make sure you communicate it to them because they're handling a lot of tests at the same time. They might miss the schedule and have two tests in the same slot. But if you inform it to them like sometime in advance, they'll reschedule it for sure.
And like being a dep rep, I can tell you that there were some tests that were being rescheduled because of that. Even Nandini can
Yeah, yeah,
confirm
yeah.
it.
Yeah. So just ensure you always like communicate with the Placecom or the CDC DepRep, whoever is in charge. That like in case your interviews are clashing, in case your tests are clashing, or if a company is not opening for you or not even giving you a chance to sit for the test, rather than just sitting with it, that नहीं chance नहीं मिला, एक बार पूछ लो, like just request the Placecom in charge, and if they can do something about it, they will definitely. I can vouch for this because in my case for Amazon, Amazon was not opening for for all departments this time, and I pushed hard. I was like, it's not like Amazon never opens. It opens usually in alternate years, and it was supposed to open last year, but it wasn't. So if you push and the Placecom thinks that it's fair enough, they do look into it.
And also
Yes.
committing while contacting the placement committee members, do be mindful while contacting. Like, do not be there
ये
and ask
दर्द बोल रहा है इसका.
you have. Just telling some personal pain I've experienced during my tenure.
Also, the interview day logistics, as you should be very well, the priorities should be set. So the company's order should matter a lot on the interview day. The tests won't clash, but on the interview day, there are some companies who take interviews in the morning and then they just wrap up and then go. So you should also take a note of that while you prioritize the companies.
Yeah, I think there's a form you're supposed to fill before the interview start.
Yes.
So fill your priorities properly there. That which companies do you want to prefer above which? So your placecoms will usually try to schedule your interviews accordingly. Your P0 comes is the first interview you will give, and they'll manage everything very nicely. But if you don't communicate, it's a very difficult job for them because they're not handling one student; they're handling like 5,000, 6,000 students. Yeah.
And two things to mention: P0 is actually a priority order. P0 is the most priority that you have.
Oh,
Nandini.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And the other thing is that on day one, you are the hero. You are the one who has to take care of your interviews. See, placement committee members will try to ease their like no, don't want to offend anyone, but they'll try to schedule your interviews based on their easiness as well. That if a company is free, they will try to send you even though it is at the bottom of your priority. So you need to take care of that as well. If you have a priority order, you try to enforce it on them. And they'll also have to follow it because it's from their side only they have asked the priority.
Right. So I think the key for interviews is please communicate with your platforms. Um, because there's no point regretting at the end that I did not even get to sit for the interview, or I had to go with my last priority because my interviews clashed and I got an offer from my third priority first. So yeah, just make sure you handle all of this beforehand.
Well, I hope Meghana's doubt is cleared with this. Now we have Ramanuj asking us the significance of CGPA in the selections.
It's massive, dude. It's massive.
Completely matters, man. Like people will tell you that if you have a 8.5 and you are just it's just required for that eligibility, I will say it's not correct for almost all the initial days of the company, maybe like till day 5 or day 6. Might be true for the later ones, I don't know for sure. But companies do prioritize your interviews, your tests, your selections based on the CV you have. If 10 people are um, applying for the company and they have a CG of like 9.9, 9.8 until 9, so the 9.9 person will get a higher priority than the 9, even though they all have cleared the base requirement of 8.5.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
it's just the people they want to select, the top people they select, the
Exactly.
yes, the interviews that they can take.
yeah, but to need any CGPA above 8 point, I think 3 4 is a safe spot. 8.5 above is a very safe zone. You won't miss out on opportunities, but you definitely have people to compete with.
Yeah.
So
And
we can
just
sorry.
a thing. And also in some of the companies, your JE rank also matter. Like companies like
Yeah.
Search, Quad-Eye, they do look at your JE rank and your CG. Like they do not take care of that CG that much, but they do look at your JE ranks. Like companies like Optiware, they didn't come in KGB, but they did come in Delhi and Bombay, and they took the top rankers itself.
So your CGPA indicates your priority in their selection, sort of initially.
So firstly, I think it's a qualification standard. You need to cross an 8.5 for most of the companies, and then it's like a priority order. Yes.
Okay. Well, that was the only doubt we received from the audience. So thank you for
Right.
clarifying it.
Awesome.
Bhavya,
Yeah, so we'll move on to the next topic. We'd like the panelists to give some fun day to the CDC Junta at IIT Kharagpur. Gunjan?
Okay, so uh, so advice from my side would be that on the interview day, take enough sleep. Okay, so don't like you should be very well prepared on the interview day, and you have to have a stable mind on the interview day because it is the day. Okay, so you have to be the most like you have to give many interviews like after one interview, and each company take 2 3 interviews. So if you have like 4 or 5 shortlists, then you need to prioritize it, and also in a very if good way. So you should also see like there is a company which has chances of you taking in, but because you were late for the interview, they would not take you. So like you should also consider this factor, not just you like the company and you want it. So that's an advice from my side.
Yeah, like even one of my good friends, Anish Sofat, he like did 10 interviews on day one. So like he was really exhausted at the end, like around 6 p.m. or something. Wasn't able to talk even. So you need to be at your full energy. And as per the last point Gunjan mentioned, even I faced that. I rescheduled my Google interviews twice for both of these rounds. And as a result, I didn't get an offer. So that was my memory. Yeah. So and you need to be, as I mentioned earlier, you need to be confident and smart enough during the interview. You should not be in a hurry and blabber around what you're saying. You should be clear what you're saying. And if possible, just rewind this whole tape that we have of 1.5 hour that, and see what all things we told. Maybe note it down and take a point of that.
Yeah, I think just one last thing. You don't have to get a day one internship offer. Chill a little. I think I took way too much stress after day two when I was like, so I come from the Department of Chemistry, and that is a huge drawback. I cannot tell you how much of a drawback that is for me. But yeah, all would like to tell you all is that don't like doubt your preparation and what you're capable of just because you're not getting a shortlist due to something that is not in your hand. You perform in your tests as much as you can, and then be patient. Yeah, you actually there are a lot of good companies that do good work besides only the famous ones that come after day two. Um, and you can always look at them. I think how
Don't
day one, the
wait.
day one, day two, day three, day four thing, how that happens is not something you want to look at right now.
Yeah.
Just yeah, I mean, just forget about it. That's a completely different ball game. Um, it does not matter if it's a day one or a day five. Go to the company you want to work at. Do the work you want to do. If it comes at day one or day five does not matter. I was looking at Vadhwani. It does not come anywhere. I think it comes on day six or something, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, like even
Um,
came little like day 7 or day 8, I guess. Like it was pretty late there.
exactly. And that does not mean the company is not worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Mintra,
just,
I guess, in India has the best workplace experience, and it is coming late, so doesn't matter.
yeah, I
Yes.
think Mintra also comes in phase two, if I'm not wrong.
I don't remember exactly, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
late. I
But
know that.
exactly. So just be patient and go for what you want. Don't try to just get done with it right in the beginning. But that's a funda to give. It's tough to follow. Uh, but I'm sure you'll be a happier person if you follow it.
Yeah. Just one more thing. During the process, try to keep your friends around. Like what happens that people do get competitive and they try not to communicate with you. That's not a good thing actually. You will be demotivated, you will be highly motivated around times, there will be swings. And you need to have people around to talk to. I don't know, like what I felt was that you cannot talk everything with your family. You'll have to give a lot of context, something like that. But your friends are also facing the same situations. They know what you are facing. They might give you some suggestions or something. So you need to keep them around. You have to talk to them and maybe keep your greed aside for a second and talk to people.
Yeah, I think that grade point is, I don't know why it comes up, but like all the resources are available, right? It's not like किसी को नहीं मिल रहा है कुछ. So it's not
Exactly.
like if you can solve a problem, the other person can't. You have way too many solutions available on the internet. So just because you are not telling that person how to solve a problem does not mean that person will not be able to solve it ever. So just like keep your friends close.
So the conclusion is eat well, sleep well, stay calm, and don't think of overly complicated things. Correct?
Just read a first class book. The books you get in the first class about your daily.
Yeah, बस like जो ऐसे morally सिखाते हैं जैसी जिंदगी जीनी है वैसी ही जिंदगी जीनी है through CDC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was a great explanation. We're glad that you've kept it very interactive throughout the session. So, coming to the conclusion of the seminar, first, we'd like to express our gratitude to all the panelists, Satvik, Gunjan, and Nandini, for giving us their precious time and sharing all their valuable insights, strategies, and experiences with us today and keeping the session very interactive. A word of appreciation to the audience for being so pleasant and active during the seminar. I hope the seminar was fruitful for all of you. By this, we come to the end of today's event. Thank you and have a pleasant evening, everyone.